Landlords in New Jersey must wait as courts sift through a 2-year backlog in cases after the eviction moratorium ended. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. So I have an interesting article for you today, and it's talking about the fact that the eviction moratorium in New Jersey, it ended on January the 1st, and now the courts have to sift through this huge 2-year backlog of cases. And it's actually a bit longer than 2 years because there were cases that were filed before the pandemic began, before the eviction moratoriums began, that still haven't been resolved yet. So some people have cases from like 2019 that are still pending right now. And it's a bad situation overall for landlords. And what they found was a lot of the courts, they don't know what to do because there's all these different rules and regulations and stuff that was put into place to help protect the tenants and prevent a huge tsunami of evictions. So they're wading through all this paperwork and they're just as confused as the landlords and tenants are in the whole situation, okay? So it's an absolutely crazy thing, and I'm not surprised that they're going through this much trouble. Now, New Jersey was one of those few states that they actually had a state eviction moratorium that lasted longer than the CDC's eviction moratorium, but it finally came to an end here at the beginning of the year. Now, unfortunately, there wasn't enough, rental assistance to go around, so a lot of landlords, they just took losses for that entire time, and that's unfortunate, okay? Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Maybe leave a comment down below and show me some support, okay? I am working every day to bring you articles about, the eviction moratorium, rent control, new landlord and tenant laws, and, it takes a lot of work, okay? It's not like I can just go out and find these articles very easily, but, all I ask is that if you like this kind of material, go ahead, hit the subscribe button. I'll be bringing you a new video every day. So, this article, it comes from news.yahoo.com, and it says, New Jersey evictions. How well are courts sifting through backlog of landlord-tenant cases? Yeah, let's see. After banning evictions for nearly 2 years, New Jersey courts have spent the past few weeks hammering away at a backlog of tens of thousands of landlord-tenant cases since the state's eviction moratorium lifted on January 1st. But the race to blitz through lingering cases filed before and during the pandemic, and then turn to new cases involving landlords who weren't paid January rent, is riddled with hurdles and confusion, especially as courts sift through new legal protections and implement new online court procedure. So yeah, part of the issue is there's a lot of new legal protections that have been put into place after all of the moratoriums came to an end, and then they have new court procedures too. So the courts are, the judges, everyone is confused about exactly what needs to be done. Not everyone is 100% sure, and it's a total mess, and it's going to cause this whole process to take a lot longer than it should. Anticipating a tsunami of cases, lawmakers passed protections to wind down the moratorium. Low and moderate income tenants who missed rent or didn't pay a rent increase between March 2020 and August 2021 could not be evicted if they filled out an income certification with the Department of Community Affairs and apply for rental assistance. So far, the Garden State hasn't yet seen the drastic uptick in eviction filings that many predicted. Between January 1st and January 12th, 2022, landlords filed 2,100 cases. According to data from the Administrative Office of the Courts, in 2021, courts counted an average of roughly 3,800 cases a month. That's down from the 2019 average of 12,600 cases a month. Yeah, it's slowly building back up, and basically because they put that thing in there that says that if a tenant applies for rental assistance and they meet certain income requirements, then they get those eviction protections. Now, I don't know if they actually are going to qualify for that rental assistance, but that doesn't matter. That stops the eviction for a few more months, and those landlords are just out that money regardless, okay? Now, Obviously, if they've only had about 2,100 cases since they've restarted the eviction moratorium, and before they were getting over 12,000 in a month, then evictions are way, way slower than they used to be. But as things finally start getting back to normal, I expect, to go back to normal levels, even in a place like New Jersey. Unless, of course, they start throwing out these new, no good cause eviction laws and all this other garbage that we're seeing up in places like New York. But the current load is filled with cases containing confusing questions, and judges and courts are not dealing with the answers the same way, landlord and tenant attorneys say. There are so many nuances in filing requirements and possible protections that most judicial employees, including many judges, are simply not familiar with all of them, said Bruce Gooden, partner of Ehrlich, Petriello, Gooden Plaza, and Reed, and counsel for the New Jersey Property Owners Association. There's so much information, and misapplication makes practicing law very difficult. It's the luck of the draw of which judge you get, said Amy Albert, an attorney with the Waterfront Project, which represents low-income renters in Hudson County. There's been no clear interpretation of how this state law is going to be addressed by the court. We're talking about variances in court procedure. Yeah, well, when they put laws in place that are this confusing, that tells you right there that it's an absolute disaster. If the judges and the court staff and the landlords, not even the tenants and their attorneys, know exactly how these laws should be implemented or how they're supposed to be implemented, nobody knows. Okay, so it really comes down to does what the judge is saying, what the current situation is in the courthouse. Have they had a good time to look at these new laws? I mean, this is ridiculous. Okay, they've put a system in place that is so complicated that nobody can figure it out, and then they expect landlords, of course, to just suffer the losses when the tenants aren't paying. And come on, at least they got the eviction ball rolling again, and it's about time. That's all I can say. It's about time. So let me skip down a little bit in this article, and here are the concerns of attorneys on both sides in these court proceedings and what they mean for landlords and tenants alike. Number one, inconsistent rulings. Attorneys say they are seeing judges rule different ways on cases with similar facts, making it difficult to give their clients advice. Judges dismissed the cases of two tenants who filed income certifications and didn't pay January rent, according to lawyers for the Waterfront Project. But that same week, a different judge ordered an adjournment or delay in a case for a client in a similar situation. That tenant would have a week to come up with the rent before being evicted. Well, like I said, if the judges don't know what exactly they're supposed to be doing, what do they expect? Okay, they all these laws are brand new, and this whole thing with the eviction moratorium ending and everything, the judges are doing the best they can. Now, I get totally frustrated coming from as a landlord if I had a judge who was basically stretching out the process and leaving me without any sort of income coming in for months on end, even though the eviction moratorium has come to an end, even if these people had applied for rent assistance. Okay, because simply put, it could take a long time to get that rent assistance, especially with all the bureaucracy and everything that they have to go through. Okay. Troubles with technology. For those without reliable internet access, online-only court proceedings can be a challenge. Courts are requiring people to be seen or to be on video, which isn't possible for people with government-provided phones that aren't smartphones. Not everyone has a computer or laptop with a video function, Symes said. Well, here's the other issue I have, okay? So, they always play it off, oh, the tenants are so dumb, they don't know how to... Listen, I don't know anybody who doesn't have a smartphone, okay? Now, I mean, you could be dirt poor, go down to the store, get yourself a prepaid, smartphone with a camera on it for $50. Okay, I've seen them at Walmart. It's ridiculous, okay? And even if you couldn't, you could still go down to the public library because you can use the computers there. So this is a bunch of garbage, okay? More excuse making for the tenants, and they always do this. And finally, Lawyers don't have access to filings. A recent privacy law meant to protect renters from being blacklisted by landlords came with unintended consequences. Some attorneys and advocates have not been able to access the court records of the people they are advising. Under S 3713 A 4463, if a landlord filed a case for eviction because a tenant did not make rent payments between March 9, 2020 and August 3, 2021, the court records would not be available to the public starting in December. So yeah, they wanted to hide the fact that, hey, these tenants had an eviction filed against them for non-payment of rent during this eviction moratorium. They didn't want to make it harder for the poor tenants. Now, unfortunately, what that means for the tenant lawyers who are actually fighting the eviction cases, they can't see these records either. So, hey, if that makes it harder for them to fight their case, too bad. Okay, I'm not really concerned about the tenants and the tenant lawyers. I'm fighting from the landlord side, and I think it's all fair at this point. We have, most of the time the law hurts us the most, okay, and helps the tenant the most. They give the tenant free lawyers in so many situations. They don't pay for the landlord's lawyers. Okay, the landlord, I'm paying for my lawyer out of my pocket. Okay, and meanwhile the tenants could be trashing the property, not paying rent, and they get to stay for free as long as they want. And I'm taking these huge losses, but you're going to pay for their lawyer? Give me a break, okay? But anyway, sounds like at least for now, some landlords are going to be able to get some of these bad tenants out of their properties up in New Jersey. Now, I'm not surprised that they're having all these issues with the court. It's going to be a mess for a little bit, but like I said earlier, it's going to get back to normal, and hopefully sooner than later.